What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Thursday, so I'm going to give my game, talk about all the players I'd be starting and sitting this week. Gonna be a long one, so sit back, hit the like button. Let's get things started off with the Thursday night game. Bengals at Ravens, massive 53-point total. Ravens 6.5-point home favorites. Every week, I ask my model to simulate every possible matchup to create an NFL power rankings based off the results. You can see that for free on Twitter. In doing this, I can also find out what games it thinks, like what potential games it thinks could produce the highest point totals on average. This game ranks inside the top 3% of all possible matchups. And if you're curious, Ravens at Lions would be the top projected game environment at 54.7. So basically, how you can think of that is the best possible game from a points perspective is up at like 54.7, 55 points. This game's at 53. So it's one of the best game environments you can possibly get. All that's to say, we're expecting points in this game. For the Bengals side, the Ravens are a pass funnel. They have a really strong ground defense. Obviously, they've been attacked through the air. We've been attacking them every week through the air. They're now allowing 281 passing yards per game, by far the most in the NFL. Burrow, Chase, they're going to be must starts. T. Higgins listed as doubtful on Wednesday, so obviously not going to be someone we're expecting to play right now. So if he is actually out, Mike Gesicki, again, going to be a fantastic option. His split with and without T. Higgins is really drastic this season. You take T off the field, and Mike Gesicki is like a featured player on this offense. You put T back on the field, Mike Gesicki doesn't really do that much. So if you need a tight end streamer, Gesicki, great option. Chase Brown has by far the worst matchup, but he was featured last week, and with Herbert being traded 2 days ago, right? Like just a couple days ago, he's not really going to have a large role on the offense, even if he is activated, which he might not be. So don't expect a nuke. It's still a really tough spot for Chase Brown, but if he's going to get all of the touches for running backs, you just have to be playing a running back in that sort of environment, getting that sort of opportunity with his talent level. For the Ravens, honestly, a similar matchup, just less extreme. Running backs do have the worst matchup, but it's not too bad. Then all of the positions are positive, but it's not like it's a smash spot or anything. Lamar, Henry, Flowers, I'd consider them all must starts this week. Really no different than a lot of different weeks when you've got a team with like a 30-point total and a ton of volumes flowing through just a couple of players. You want to be starting those players. Andrews, probably a better streaming option than he is most weeks. You've got Isaiah Likely out this week. You've got, again, a good matchup, a lot of potential points. Andrews, a lot of his production does come through touchdowns, so touchdowns are fluky, right? Even if they score 38 points this week, he could still just not find the end zone. You could just have multiple players score multiple touchdowns, and he's not one of them. But if you have been kind of moving him in and out of the lineup, this would be a week where he'd be a very strong play. I would say it depends a little bit on Deontay Johnson. And then, of course, for Deontay, it also depends on Deontay Johnson. Hopefully, so last week, they gave us news, right? Last week, they told us how many snaps he's going to play. Hopefully, they do that again. Hopefully, they come out and they either say there's no limit, he's going to play as many as he can, or they tell us, hey, it's like 30, 35 snaps. We'll see what happens before the game. But technically, the more he plays, slightly worse for Andrews, but for the most part, it's really just worse for Aguilar, worse for Bateman. Not as much for Andrews. Like, Andrews is going to have a high snap share this week. He's going to be using the red zone, sort of regardless of Deontay. It's just if Deontay's on the field, maybe there's a few more schemed plays to him, and so it can still negatively impact Andrews. But to wrap it all up, I think Andrews is a good streaming option. I think you're starting their obvious starts. And then Deontay, right now, he's around the wide receiver 50. But again, that's totally going to depend on what news we get before. Right now, I'm still expecting him to be somewhat limited, just have somewhat lower of a snap share. But if he's a full go, I'm obviously going to move him up in the rankings. Sunday games kick off in Munich, where we're going to have a riveting game between the Giants and the Panthers. Please note, it's an early game, so set your lineups Saturday night or wake up early Sunday morning, depending on where you live on the coast. Terrible game, though. I mean, it's really not one that we're very excited to see. 40.5-point total. Giants 5.5-point, quote-unquote, road favorites. Again, both technically on the road. For the Giants, it's a great matchup against a Panthers defense that really can't stop anything. Panthers are now second worst in EPA per pass allowed, fourth worst in EPA per rush allowed. I think you can tell when you watch these games, they're just not really providing much resistance on defense. They've also allowed the 8th most passing yards per game and the most rushing yards per game. So you can kind of attack them however you want, really dependent on your game script. I would consider both Neighbors and Tyron Tracy Jr. must starts in this spot. Maybe you've got 3 running back ones, and so you can't start Tyron Tracy Jr., but I would say most people do not have 3 running back ones. It's a really good opportunity for him. He's seeing really good volume. He's playing really well. I do everything I can to start Tyron Tracy Jr. this week. After those 2, though, more fringe plays. Daniel Jones projects well right now. Obviously, that's very tough to trust. Obviously, he's got a lot of variance there. He could always, even in a good spot, fall apart, do nothing, have 10 fantasy points, and you're like, why did I start Daniel Jones? I honestly think he can get benched soon, but it's a good spot. He's mobile, so the projection kind of makes sense. I kind of want to drop it a little bit, but he's a fringe, like a high-end quarterback too this week. He's a decent streaming option if you want to go there. And then Wan'Dale, he's got a really strong target share, but also 6.7 yards per reception. So he's going to need a lot of receptions to do anything. He's not breaking long plays. He's just getting the ball barely over the line of scrimmage and hoping he can get 6-7 yards on it. So not a great play, but someone in like a full PPR format wouldn't be terrible. And then Theo Johnson, more of a watch, more of a stash. Again, he was the rookie we talked about in the waiver video. He's playing a ton. It's just until we see the targets a little bit more consistent, I don't know if you can trust him outside of maybe like a single game DFS lineup. Then for the Panthers side, Bryce Young is going to start again. Jonathan Brooks was activated. Don't know if he's going to play yet. I don't think that matters a ton for Brooks. Like even if they said he's playing, you're not starting Jonathan Brooks in his first game back. So still, I think you're going with Chuba Hubbard. But how much he plays will obviously impact Chuba Hubbard. As things stand right now, I'm projecting Brooks to play, but just be limited. And even in doing that, Chuba's still my running back 15. Leggett is my wide receiver 28. Coker is my wide receiver 41. Bryce Young is my quarterback 20. So the odds are the only 2 you're starting in this offense are Chuba Hubbard and Xavier Leggett. Entirely possible, though. I mean, like I said, like maybe you have 3 running back ones and you're not playing Tyron Tracy Jr. You might have 3 top 25 wide receivers and so you're not playing Leggett. So he's still, kind of on that back end. Definitely not someone you need to be starting. I don't think I'm like scared overall of the Giants defense, but their run defense is really bad and their pass defense is still a little bit above average. Plus, they have a really high sack rate. They're leading the league in sack rate. So there's a world here where the Panthers look at this matchup and they're like, okay, let's try and run the ball as much as humanly possible and just not drop back that much. And if that happens, of course, that's going to be bad for Leggett and Coker. So I would probably only want to play Chuba Hubbard. 1 o'clock games kick off with 49ers at Bucs, another high total game, 50.5. A lot of high total games this week. Exciting to see. 49ers, 5.5 point home favorites. For the 49ers, this is an elite spot. They're coming off by. The Bucs defense has really struggled, especially recently. Every position grades out having an elite matchup, which of course is unfortunate when you're playing the 49ers. Juwan Jennings, McCaffrey, expected back this week. Anything could happen. Anyone could suffer a setback on Thursday, on Friday, over the weekend, but expectation is you're going to get both those guys back. So San Fran, even being down Ayuk, this is actually the healthiest they've been all season, which again is wild to think that being down your wide receiver 1 is the healthiest you've been because you've always had multiple people out with injuries. But yeah, if these guys are coming back, then it's going to be a really positive thing for this offense and a good matchup. We should expect a lot of points on their side. McCaffrey, obviously, if he plays, you're starting him. Debo, Kittle, I don't see a world where you're benching either one of them. After those 3, I think you have decisions to make. I think I would play Purdy as a streaming option. Really good and expected fantasy points in the season. I do think bringing McCaffrey back helps elevate his ceiling, helps keep his floor a little bit higher. Sure, McCaffrey can score rushing touchdowns, but Jordan Mason could as well before, and Jordan Mason wasn't involved in the receiving game. When you take Mason off the field and replace him with McCaffrey, that's a weapon they can use in the passing game, and it just makes their offense a little bit more dangerous, more explosive. And when you add Juwan back onto the field, you get Pearson maybe developing a little bit, maybe being used a little bit more in the offense. I just think, like, if I had Purdy, he's my quarterback 7 right now, unless you had a really strong other option, I'd probably play Purdy this weekend. Juwan Jennings right now, wide receiver 32, Pearson, wide receiver 49. So those two, again, more on the fringes, but I have both of them. I'm starting Juwan Jennings in the flex this weekend, unless we get news of like, a snap count that he's not going to be 100%. I just don't think they would play him if he wasn't 100%. And he was practicing early in the week. So again, I think he's going to be good to go. If he is good to go, I would play him in the flex. I am playing him in the flex. Yeah, I would probably wait on Pearsall because I know he looked pretty good before the bye. And it's like, oh, now he's coming off bye. Maybe the role expands. But when you add Jennings back, when you add McCaffrey, like, I want to see this offense operate for trusting Ricky Pearsall. But excited about him long term. For the Bucs, Baker's been incredible. Like, he has been so good this season. Then you remove Godwin, and he was good. Then you remove Evans, and he still looks good. Like, he's having such an awesome season. The problem is, you start losing all of these players, and it's like, even if he's doing amazing, it's still difficult to produce given the wide receivers he's throwing to. I would not be starting any of these wide receivers, but Cade Otton's also been playing out of his mind. They've been featuring him basically as their wide receiver 1, even given he has the worst matchup on the team. He should be in starting lineups. There's some people who ask me, they're like, Nick, I have like George Kittle and Cade Otton, but like, I don't see how I bench Cade Otton. I agree. He's literally Cade Otton, if he was a wide receiver, would be the wide receiver 1 overall since week 7. So you can play Cade Otton in the flex. We never want to play tight ends in the flex spot, but if you have, and it would only be if you have like Kittle, Kelsey, Bowers, some of these guys where you're like, okay, I can't bench them, and you've also got Cade Otton, just play them both, play them in the flex, unless you've got like a super team, but maybe you're not really too worried if you have a super team. But yeah, not touching these wide receivers. Start Otton, Bucky, White. They're my running backs 27 and 28. Bucky's playing really well. They had an awful matchup last week, so I wouldn't really hold last week's game against either one of them. No one does that good as a running back against KC. I think either would be fine as a low-end running back too. After the first round of projections so far, if we look at the running back position, there's a very clear top 25. Like after the running back 25, there's a drop down, and then there's a clear like 26 to maybe 33, 34 sort of range, and all those running backs are on the fringes. They're viable. They're probably going to need a touchdown to really do anything that you're happy about, but they can score a touchdown. They could hit on a long play. They could do something to where the running backs 26 through like 33, 34, fine to play at running back 2. You just shouldn't be that excited about it. And that's where these two kind of fall, is into that range. I think every running back in the top 25 this week, you can at least feel somewhat good about the production, and you'd feel good about playing them at running back 2 or running back 1. Again, these two kind of fall, at least right now. Again, I update the projections throughout the week. Right now, they kind of fall just outside of that range. And then Baker's totally fine to stream as well. Again, you would love Evans back. You'd love Godwin to not be out for the season. But he's playing so well right now that if you've been streaming Baker and you're like, there's nothing really that great in free agency. I know he has no wide receivers, but should I just keep doing it? I mean, if there's no one else you're excited about, he's still, even with the injuries, grades out as my quarterback 13, so I'd still be fine going with him. Next up, we've got Falcons at Saints, 46.5-point total. Falcons, 3.5-point road favorites. For the Falcons, the Saints are a great matchup. It's especially true for running backs. Bijan is in an exceptional spot, and obviously you're just starting him every week. At wide receiver, it comes down to London. I don't know his status yet, but if he's out there, you're starting him. I don't think they would throw him out there if he wasn't good to go. And even if I project him in, Mooney grades out as an exceptional play. So obviously, if London is out, play Mooney. He's going to be their wide receiver 1, get a ton of volume, probably going to go off. But again, even projecting London in, Mooney grades out really good. He's seeing really strong volume this season. The Saints aren't tanking, but they're tanking, like they're saying publicly they're not, but they are. Defense, super injured, traded away Lattimore, offense, decimated by injuries. So you can expect a lot more often they're going to go 3 and out. They're not going to be able to stay on the field. It's just a spot where we should expect really strong production on the Atlanta side. So if it's close between someone and an Atlanta player, you'd probably want to play them. But yeah, obviously, if London misses, it makes everyone else a stronger play. But even if London plays, I think you play London, you play Pitts, you play Bijan, you play Mooney, you stream Kirk Cousins. And then I would say it opens up a play if London is out for Ray McLeod. Probably only in full PPR, but if you were desperate in half PPR, especially if maybe you had a second flex spot, Ray would be totally fine if London were out, not if London plays. And then Kirk Cousins, of course, better if London plays, but could still be streamed if London were out. For the Saints, really unfortunate that Olave keeps having these head injuries. Like, he's been a dominant wide receiver when healthy, but it seems like every time he gets going, every time the opportunity is there for a breakout, he suffers an injury, gets a concussion, which I guess is also an injury. He's not going to play this week. I truly don't know if he's going to play again for the Saints. The problem is, like, the trade deadline has passed, so they can't like trade him away. But I don't really know what he's going to end up doing. He's got to figure out what he really wants to do. But again, he's not going to play this week. So Kamara, obviously, you're starting him. He's like their entire offense. He had 1 billion touches last week. I guess they're just going to run him into the ground every week. Taysom Hill, great streaming option at tight end. Basically, everyone else in this offense needs to be benched. You can attack the Falcons defense. The Falcons do not have that good of a defense, but I'm not about to start Mason Tipton or Cedric Wilson, like, unless I'm in a 16-team league. And even then, I am in those leagues, and I'm not starting Mason Tipton or Cedric Wilson. I'm surprised. I don't know, maybe a little surprised that they just didn't do anything with Kamara at the deadline. Like, there are definitely teams who would have wanted him, but I know that Kamara did want to finish out his career as a Saint. But I mean, realistically, like, they probably have to give him 30 touches a game right now, because what else are they going to do? They have no wide receiver that should even be a wide receiver 3 on a good offense. They have Taysom Hill being their like running back 2 right now. One thing I want to note, we've got this weird thing going on with Kendre Miller. This doesn't happen for this week, right? He's on IR. But for future weeks, or for like a stash, if you're looking for like a running back stash, apparently he's like healthy. And apparently it's just like Dennis Allen being weird and like not being a good coach. There are rumors that once he comes back from IR, once he's eligible to return, that they're actually going to give him a lot of touches and just like see what they have in him. So he could be someone on a tanking team where they want to give a ton of touches to. He could be someone later in the season that maybe you're looking to. So again, not someone for right now, but if you're stashing, if you're looking for running back stash spots, he'd be a pretty decent option. Next up, we've got the Broncos at the Chiefs, 41.5 point total. Chiefs 8.5 point home favorites. For the Broncos, this is a horrible spot. The running backs are just super unlikely to do anything. Peyton also talked about getting Estime more involved last week. Didn't really happen, but then he kind of went to him later in the game. Estime has been good when given opportunity. He just can't hold on to the football. So after the game, Peyton talked about getting him even more involved. Maybe that happens, and if it does happen, you've got a 3 running back committee in like the worst possible spot. So again, you're not starting these guys, but long term, if Estime can hold on to the football, it's terrible news for Javonte Williams, because again, Estime has looked really good. He's a prospect I really liked. I think long term he can be a really good running back in the NFL. And if they're going to go to 3 running back committee, not only can you not trust him at KC, which you can't trust really anyone at KC, but you can trust them in like a good matchup either. But yeah, only player you can really trust on this offense right now, and again in this spot, is Courtland Sutton. But even he is only my wide receiver 33 right now, far from a must start. I really just wouldn't want to play Broncos players this weekend. Then for the Chiefs, I mean, it's also not a good spot, right? It's just nearly not as bad because you're home, you're a favorite. Mahomes also been getting going a little bit lately. Still only like a low-end quarterback 1 right now. Most exciting players in this team really are Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, which is kind of wild because, you know, normally this point of the year, we're seeing rookies break out. We're seeing younger players breaking out. Hunt is 29, Hopkins is 32, and Kelce is 35. Like, that is the core of the Kansas City offense, are these super old players that are so past their prime, and you can see it on the field every single play. But Casey's basically moving the ball down the field 4 or 5 yards at a time. But if all the offense is going to flow through 3 players, we're going to talk about that with the Rams. We're going to talk about that with the Dolphins. When you've got offenses that are very consolidated around a couple of players, and the Jets as well. If we know where the volume's going, You don't actually need that amazing of volume, because if it's all going to 3 dudes, well, even if you're a bad offense, which Casey is not a bad offense, even if you're a bad offense, you're getting production. So you can really start all these guys, obviously. But really, it's a positive for Hopkins. Like, if they're going to use him in the Rashee Rice role, even having the worst matchup on the team, given the amount of volume he's getting from a great quarterback in a great system, I think you're just starting DeAndre Hopkins moving forward. Clearly, he trusts him more than the other wide receivers. And then, of course, I don't know if I said it, but start Kareem Hunt, start Travis Kelce. Next up, we've got Bills at Colts, 47-point total. Bills 4-point road favorites. For the Bills, this is actually the number 2 schedule-adjusted matchup for tight ends. Kincaid also has at least 6 targets in 6 straight games. He hasn't hit the ceiling we hoped he'd have to start the season, but he's a must-start this weekend, as is Josh Allen. We'll see the final status of both Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. Seems like Keon is going to miss this weekend while Cooper is trending towards playing, but we're going to know a lot more on Friday. I think I would start Cooper if he's out there, and either way, Shakir is a really interesting play in the flex spot. I'm not super interested in Keon Coleman if he's able to go. He's banged up. He's not a super efficient player, so he's going to hit on more big plays. Still a good matchup, but it's like I kind of want to see it a little bit more from him while he's also healthy. If he's going to go out there also with Amari Cooper, also with Shakir, and he's injured, it's like it doesn't feel like a spot where you're going to need to use him. So definitely more of a lower end option if he plays. But again, I feel like he's trending towards not playing, in which case I would want to play Amari Cooper and Shakir if I could. James Cook right now running back 20, so a strong start. But with how pass heavy they've been trending and how well Ray Davis has been playing, I have some concerns about his long-term value. Again, I think I'd play him this weekend. You're probably playing a top 20 running back, but long-term, I'm a little bit concerned with James Cook. Then for the Colts, JT's a must-start. Josh Downs is my wide receiver 22. Pittman, wide receiver 34. Flacco, only my quarterback 21. Pretty tough spot for this passing attack, but I do like Downs as a start. I mentioned in the trade targets video, he leads the NFL with 8.3 catchable targets per game when Flacco starts. He has a massive 28% target share. I very much disagree with how the Colts are running their wide receiver rotation. It makes absolutely no sense. They are not using their best players, and they're not putting their best players out there enough. But when Downs is out there, when they choose to play him, he is heavily targeted. He does have a lot of expected fantasy points when Flacco starts, so it's a projected trailing script. Like, I think it's still a good enough spot for him, and the matchup does tilt a little bit more towards the slot, where I think Downs is definitely the best play among these guys. So JT, Downs, probably the only two I'd feel good about this weekend. Next up, we've got Steelers at the Commanders, 45.5-point total. Commanders 3-point home favorites. For the Steelers, most of their offense is flowing through Najee and Pickens, so both of them grade out as strong starts. I'm a little hesitant to go like all in on those two because they're coming off bye. You never know when teams want to change things up post bye. There's for sure a chance that like Jaylen Warren gets more run, that Mike Williams, I would say there'd be a better chance if they got Mike Williams like last week, but maybe there's a chance Mike Williams is used more than we think as wide receiver 2, that they utilize at tight ends a little bit more post-bye. My guess, though, is that Najee, Pickens, they have secure enough roles where I'd feel pretty good about starting them. I wouldn't really want to have either one of them on my bench this weekend, and I just don't have enough faith in any other player on this offense. Again, maybe Warren has a stronger role post-bye, but we kind of have to see that before trusting him. Maybe Mike Williams gets going in this offense in a couple of weeks, but for right now, Pickens and Najee. For the Commanders, Jaden Daniels is the only must-start, but McLaurin is close to it. The matchup is really bad. The Steelers have really been known to shut down wide receivers. McLaurin's also been hitting on efficiency. If he doesn't have 2 touchdowns, if he doesn't hit on a long play, that can really hold him back because he's not seeing like double-digit targets every week. He had like 3 targets last week. He just happened to catch 2 touchdowns on those 3 targets. I have him. I'm playing him. I'm just reducing my expectations this week. It's not a good matchup. Behind him, Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, they do rank outside that clear top 25 running backs we talked about. It's a poor spot for running backs, and I don't think they want to overload Brian Robinson Jr. with touches coming off of the injury. So I would expect them to roughly split, with still more of the split going to Brian Robinson Jr. But in a general split, that's not really appealing in this matchup. Ertz has also really come back to earth the last couple of weeks. He's grading out as a much lower end play than before. It really just is, you want to play Daniels, obviously. You want to play McLaurin because he's been playing really well. But that's really it. Maybe in a deeper format, you can rely on Noah Brown. He's been playing pretty decent, but again, the matchup is poor. He's only projecting for like 7.5 half PPR points. You probably don't need to play Noah Brown unless you're a 16-team league. Next up, we've got Vikings at Jaguars, 45-point total. Vikings, 4.5-point road favorites. For the Vikings, this is a smash spot. Jaguars defense is terrible. Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, all clear must starts this weekend. Addison, Hawkinson, they're strong starts. They're only projected as a team to score 25. I feel like that's a little bit low. I could easily see them hitting 28, 30 points this weekend. I could see them going north of 30 points. So if it's close, I would play a Vikings player. But yeah, technically, if they're only projected 25, it's not a guarantee that Addison or Hawkinson do anything. But those five, like I would feel pretty good about all of them. I would want all of them in my starting lineup if I can, but I could see maybe Hawkinson. Maybe you already have some great options. Maybe you already have Gesicki. You already have Auden. You're definitely playing them over Hawkinson this weekend. On the other side, Kirk's done for the season. Lawrence is banged up. Etienne and Tank are splitting touches in a brutal matchup. And while it's a good spot for the wide receivers, if Lawrence is starting banged up, you know, there's definitely a strong chance that he or the backup just gets confused by Minnesota's scheme and just completely falls apart. Evan Ingram is a volume-based play. Like, I think for him, because we're projecting, I don't know if we can project 10 targets, but we're kind of expecting, 9+ targets in this spot because of that volume at tight end. He still grades out as a great play. Brian Thomas Jr., the ceiling is there, right? He could hit long any play. He's someone they're going to focus on. So the ceiling's enough there where I would want to use him to flex if I could. But besides those two, I don't really trust anyone in this offense this weekend. So I would personally bench everyone else. Final 1 o'clock game is going to be Patriots at Bears. Low 39-point total. Bears 6-point home favorites. For the Patriots, this is a poor spot, obviously, and it's a bad offense in a poor spot, so that's not great. Stevenson has been featured recently. They are not using Gibson. They're really focusing on Stevenson. As long as he can hold on to the football, he should get a lot of touches. He does have the one positive matchup on the team. You can definitely play him at running back too. Aside from him, though, maybe Hunter Henry as like a high-end tight end too. Maybe you can stream Drake May if you think that the rushing will continue, but he had like 90 rushing yards last weekend. If you think maybe he rushes for like 50 or 60 yards, that's going to add enough of a floor where he doesn't need to do that much in the passing game to produce decent numbers. I don't think this particular spot is where I'd want to be streaming him, but if you have been and you don't have anyone else, he'd be fine to use. But overall, again, the Bears have a very strong defense. The Patriots don't have a super consolidated offense, and so Stevenson is really the only one I'd feel good about this weekend. Then for the Bears, New England is a plus matchup for running backs, and Swift has been seeing awesome usage as of late. He should remain in starting lineups. Aside from him, though, it's really difficult to have confidence in this passing attack. Their offensive coordinator is the worst. Caleb isn't playing super well right now. Moore, Adunze, they're totally fine in the flex spot if you need them. Maybe second flex spot for Keenan Allen. My guess is Christian Gonzalez will be on DJ Moore. And so I don't want to say excited about any of these wide receivers, but it would open up Adunze for some downfield looks, some one-on-one coverage downfield. He's a good enough player. The Patriots have a weak enough secondary that if Gonzalez is going to shadow DJ Moore, it will open up opportunities for Rome Odunze, and I wouldn't be shocked if he had a good game. He had like 6 for 100, so you could go there. DJ Moore is also good enough to just beat Christian Gonzalez, but those are really only flex plays, and again, I would start DeAndre Swift, and I probably wouldn't stream Caleb Williams. 4 o'clock games kick off with Titans at Chargers, 38-point total. Chargers 7.5-point home favorites, meaning the Titans are only projected for 15.25 points. That is not good for the Titans. awful spot. You're on the road. You're playing elite defense. Again, you're projected to score 15.25 points. You're really only considering Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, but even if you project Spears out, Pollard's really only grading out as like a mid to low end running back 2. It's still in that top 25. I think you're still likely starting him, but he only grades out as running back 23. And I can promise you, if Spears plays and I project him in, that Pollard's going to bump outside that top 25. So we'll see what happens there. Ridley, also my wide receiver 25 this weekend. More of a volume-based play, similar to last week. It's not a good spot. He doesn't have good quarterback play, but if he's going to be the focal point of this passing offense, he's going to get as many opportunities as he's been getting. You could definitely play him in the flex. Then for the Chargers, it's a better spot since they're home favorites, but the Titans do still have a strong defense, and the game environment itself is still poor. We're not expecting the Titans to really push the Chargers for like a back and forth where each team is scoring to the upper 20s, and so it could still be a pretty gross game overall, and it is expected to be a relatively gross game. The Chargers have been a lot more pass-heavy post-bye, but wide receivers also do have the worst matchup on the team. The Titans rank top 10 in EPA per pass allowed. They've allowed the fewest passing yards per game in the NFL. Overall, it's not a week where you need to stream Herbert, but moving forward, Herbert is definitely in consideration given how pass heavy they've been. It's also not a week where you want to use secondary players on the Chargers. So Dobbins, low-end running back 2, does grade out in that top 25. Ladd, okay to use in the flex, but aside from that, I would probably just avoid Chargers players. Next up, we've got Eagles at Cowboys. 43-point total. Eagles 7-point road favorites. Of course, total lower, pushing towards the Eagles because Dak Prescott on IR, not going to play this weekend, plus CeeDee Lamb is banged up. For the Eagles, as of Wednesday, A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert were back at practice, so not a guarantee they're going to play, but that's a really positive sign. If they were more questionable, maybe they wouldn't be out there Wednesday and they'd start to, practice on Thursday, on Friday. The fact that they were out there Wednesday is a very good sign. Dallas defense, obviously everyone knows, been destroyed this season. They're giving up the most rushing efficiency in the NFL, third most passing efficiency. Plus, like I said before, Dak's not going to play. Lamb banged up, so their offense is likely to struggle. You're just starting Eagles players. And that matters because, obviously you don't care about the Dallas side totally when you have Eagles players because you're like, who cares if they score points? But you do to a degree in terms of like short fields, in terms of getting the ball back. Like if Dallas can't move the ball, yes, they can't score points, which means there's a little bit more risk of a blowout, but that blowout happens because they can't move the ball. Eagles get the ball in midfield. Eagles are just always in position to score. And so if they can score 4 or 5 touchdowns, I don't really care if the game's over in the fourth quarter. If you're scoring that many touchdowns, a lot of these players are scoring. They're having a good day in fantasy. So I would say all of Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, they should probably all be started. I would say, especially they're not going to play A.J. Brown if he's not going to go. So play him if he's out there. I would say the only one you're considering more is Dallas Goedert in his first game back. And it's a similar situation where, like, if you picked up Mike Gesicki, if you picked up Kate On, if you have David Njoku, Evan Ingram, if you've got, like, Jake Ferguson, you've got that kind of core of tight end, you don't need to play Dallas Goedert. If you've been streaming, though, and you've been maybe struggling and maybe you've missed on a lot of these tight ends, Dallas Goedert would be a totally fine play to make. But yeah, he's probably more on the fringes than those other guys. I actually don't have him projected in right now. Once I do it, though, I expect him to grade out as roughly a high-end tight end 2. For the Cowboys, like I said, there's added risk that this is a blowout, and that would obviously be very bad for the team that is blown out. It's not as bad for the team doing the blowout because they're scoring a ton of points. They're getting a ton of yards. Like, they're sitting in the fourth quarter because they did so well in the first 3. If you have your team sitting in the fourth quarter because they did so bad in the first 3 quarters, that can be very, very bad. I think you can still lean on the core. I wouldn't start Cooper Rush, but CeeDee Lamb has actually done fine. Not amazing, but he's done totally fine in starts with Cooper Rush. So if Lamb is out there and there's no word on being limited, and again, I don't think they would play him if he was expected to be limited, but he's hurt, so he could get a re-injury and exit the game. But you're starting CeeDee Lamb if he is starting. Ferguson right now, tight end 10. I think you're starting him as well. And then Rico Dowdle is that running back 25, so he is the last player in that top 25 right now. I think you're starting that 3. If Lamb were to miss, technically it opens up Jalen Tolbert as maybe a fringe flex play. It probably focuses more targets on Jake Ferguson. maybe more touches for Rico Dowdle as well, but it also increases the risk that they completely fall apart and do nothing, so it adds downside risk to the offense. Final 4 o'clock game is going to be Jets at Cardinals, 46-point total. Jets half-point road favorites. For the Jets, offense is very easy to break down. They are one of the consolidated offense I was talking about, similar to the Rams. When you've got these offenses that all of the production is flowing through, or virtually all the production is flowing through their top 3 players, even in games where they don't produce a lot of points, they don't move the ball that successfully, they do well because you're still going to score as an NFL offense. You're still going to move the ball to some degree. So if all of this offense is flowing through 3, you just have to start them every week. So Breece Hall, Devonta Adams, Garrett Wilson, all need to be in starting lineups each week. All could have a dud, but the dud is more likely to come because one of the others dropped a nuke. And since we don't really know which one's going to drop a nuke, we have to kind of assume it's even throughout, or maybe your guy's going to drop a nuke and you don't want him on the bench. Again, start all 3 of those guys. For the Cardinals, the Jets are a poor matchup, but 22.75 is their team total. That's not terrible. If they score into the low 20s, you're at least somewhat okay with that. The more annoying part is not the points for the Cardinals, it's their pace. They're playing super slow, which is concerning for me because the Jets will also play super slow, and the game's projected at half a point difference, so it's expected to be close. And if it is close and you got both sides snapping the ball with like 2 seconds left in the play clock and really making things slow and being somewhat efficient because they are still good offenses. So it can just be a spot where, like, you know, you're looking at the game and you're like, how on earth are we already in the 4th quarter? Like, it just feels like the game is going to go really, really fast because it's going to play so slow. And if that's really limiting plays, it doesn't hurt the Jets as much because you only have 3 players getting the production. So even on limited plays, they can do well. Arizona is more spread out. Last week, they used 3 running backs, right? They've got a number of different pass catchers they can use. Kyler can take off, so you can have dropbacks that don't even result in a target. So there's a lot more risk on the Arizona side. I still think James Conner and Trey McBride are must starts. I would probably be playing them if I had them. But behind those 2, no one grades out as a must play. Marvin Harrison Jr. is someone we're going to love in some spots. We're going to love a lot more in games where Arizona is pushed. Arizona needs to produce a lot of points, and they need to play faster. Wheels up for Marvin those games. That is not a spot we're expecting this weekend. Maybe they're pushed to score, but I don't think they're going to be pushed in a way where, like, the Jets get up 21-0. The Jets keep playing fast, keep putting up points, and Arizona's like, oh my goodness, we need to go no huddle. We need to play super fast. I don't think that's going to happen. And if that doesn't happen, play volume combined with matchup makes Marv maybe a flex play, but not someone you're super excited about this weekend. And it also makes Kyler someone that there's a lot of streaming quarterbacks I'd prefer over Kyler this weekend. Sunday night game is going to be Lions at Texans, 49-point total. Texans 3.5-point home favorites. For the Lions, this is an awful matchup for tight ends, a poor one for running backs, and a great one for wide receivers. Laporta has 6 expected points per game this season, plus Jameson Williams is back, so he should honestly be benched this weekend until we see more production from Laporta. With J-Mo back, you really just can't be playing him. I know the running backs have a poor matchup, but that doesn't really matter when you have Gibbs and Montgomery in this offense. They're not, slam dunk running back ones, but it would be really tough not to play them. I would say Monty is the more questionable one, but he's still my running back 24. He still grades out in the top 25. I still think you're playing him, but if, you had 3 amazing running backs, it's not a good spot for Dave Montgomery, and he will definitely need a touchdown, but it's Dave Montgomery. He's probably going to end up scoring a touchdown. So overall, I think you are starting St. Brown, Gibbs, Montgomery, maybe streaming Goff if you need to, but his passing volume has been way down this season because they've opted for just an efficient offense. They've opted for, when we throw the ball, we want slam dunk efficiency. We want you to throw with like 90% accuracy, and we're going to run it basically every single other play, and it's working so well that why would they change anything else? So the pass attempts aren't really there for him to be a consistent option, and it's also not there for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, yes, you're starting him, but you're not starting him to the degree you were last year. Like, last year, it was like you started him and you knew you were getting 8 for 100 touchdown every game. That is not the case this weekend. You need to reduce your expectation for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then J-Mo is fine as like a high upside bench player. We're going to talk about him being similar to Waddle in a second. He's someone that it's like, if you're down to your flex spot, high upside bench player, but also flex player. If you're in that last flex spot and you're like, okay, I'm the favorite. right? I'm projected to win this matchup by like 15 points. This team that I'm playing against scores like 90 every week. I just can't screw up. I just can't score 0 in the flex spot. Get Jameson Williams out of that spot because he could absolutely score 0. He could score 1, score 2 points. If you are on the other side and you're a 15-point underdog and you're like, man, I keep scoring 90 every week and this team keeps going off, I need someone to hit, put Jameson Williams into the flex spot because he could easily score. I don't want to say easily. We could easily envision a world where he scores 2 40-yard touchdowns, and that's just upside that a lot of other players, when you're considering them in the flex spot, don't have. So again, take that take in a second. We're going to do the exact same one with Jalen Waddle. Just understand that sometimes projections, sometimes even looking at 80 percentile ceilings, it doesn't always get you the right play. Think about your team. Think about what you need in that spot. If you need guaranteed points, JMO, Waddle, not your options. If you need upside, JMO, Waddle, those are your options. Then for the Texans side, TBD at the moment. Don't really know if Nico's going to play this week. He passed everything. So from a health standpoint, he cleared everything he needs to clear. He can play this weekend. My guess is he'll be out there. But will they hold him out one more week out of like an abundance of caution? I don't know yet because he's so important to this offense that maybe they do that. You're absolutely, if they put him out there, he's good to go. You are absolutely playing him if he starts. And then if he does not start, you're absolutely playing Tank Dell. Dell is more of a flex option if Nico ends up playing. But it's an elite game environment. I would still be pretty excited to play Tank Dell. Just, understand that Nico's their one. Nico will be featured. Dell would still have a much lower floor, much lower ceiling, much lower or average projection if Nico is going to play. But I think you're probably playing Tank Dell no matter what. And then obviously start Mixon. It's a brutal matchup against a very good Lions run defense, but he's been incredible this season. He's seeing amazing volume. He is a running back 1 every single week. I do not care who they're playing. And then I probably would not play Stroud. I definitely wouldn't play Stroud if Nico is out. Maybe you can stream him if Nico plays and Tank plays and Mixon plays, and you're like, okay, maybe we can get some touchdowns here. But Stroud has just not been that amazing this season, hasn't shown an incredible ceiling. I would prefer, and you probably have found a different streaming option at this point, I would prefer not to play him this weekend. Monday night game is going to be Dolphins at Rams. Very high, 50-point total. Rams, 1 point. Home favorites. Should be a really, really good game. For the Dolphins, they've for sure fallen short of expectations so far this season, but Achane, Hill, they got to be in your starting lineup every week. Achane is basically their wide receiver 2 this season, on top of being their their running back 1. So obviously starting Devon Achane. Biggest decision is what to do with Waddle. Again, he's been a big disappointment this season, even in the games that Tua has played. But same exact take as Jameson Williams. If you need huge upside, go with him. If you need stable production, stable floor, do not go with him. I do think the Dolphins are going to need to be aggressive this weekend. Like, this is a great game environment. They got to win, so they're going to be leaning on their studs. The Rams defense has been improving, but they're not like a defense we're terrified of. The game is in a dome. It is projected to be close. Like, everything points to both of these sides having pretty decent efficiency on offense. And if one side really gets going, it is going to push the other side to be productive, and I think they will end up being productive. So as a tiebreaker, we always talk about these tiebreaker games, like the Falcons were a tiebreaker as well. As a tiebreaker, if you've got a player in this game versus a player in most other games, go with the player in this game. Then finally, on the Rams side, similar to the Jets, similar to what we talked about with the consolidated offenses, this offense is Kyren, Puka, and Kupp. It is those 3 players with a little bit to everyone else. So you are starting those 3 regardless of matchup. Demarcus Robinson has had some really nice games recently, but he's been doing that in games where like one of Puka or Kupp is out, right? And he had the good game last week, but Puka was kicked out of the game in like the second quarter or something like that. So if you've got Puka and Kupp fully healthy, which you should this week, you're not going to see very much volume, and he's for sure going to need a long touchdown, which isn't something we really expect. In a deeper format, maybe 8, 10, 12 team leagues, you do not need to play Demarcus Robinson. And then Stafford, pretty good streaming option. We've talked about this for Stafford for a while with like when one of these guys is out, it's not enough. It's not really enough playmakers, especially when both of them were out, Puka and Kupp. it wasn't enough playmakers for Stafford to be relied on as a streaming option. With both of them back, as long as it's not a terrible matchup, you can stream Matthew Stafford going forward. Projects right now is my quarterback 15. That'll kind of like go up and down a little bit depending on exactly how I finish the projections, but he will be a rock solid streaming option, roughly a high-end quarterback too. I'd be 100% okay streaming him this weekend. So please subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Really helps me out a lot more than you think. And why not click the like button while you're down there as well. I will be updating the rankings as we approach Sunday, so make sure you check back on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, for my latest take on each player. That'll do it for this one, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the Underdog video.